All right, Jack. The BBWAA has conducted the Hall of Fame election since the Hall began in 1936. Do the BBWAA members see the vote as one of their most important responsibilities?
Oh, there's no question about it. I think every first-year voter who gets that envelope for the first time, he or she just looks at it and maybe gets a little intimidated by it, but it's almost like being welcomed to the club. This is something that's every baseball writer thinks about. They know that if I do this for 10 consecutive years, I'm going to get on that voting list. It's a very important thing to baseball writers.
How many voters are there?
Right now, the total is somewhere in the mid-600s, and our return this year of 581 is the biggest election we've had. We have like a 94% return rate.
That's an incredible return rate.
The people at all these survey places, Harris and the rest of them, say it's just absolutely incredible that many people respond. But it's a great privilege, and the writers feel that way. For the first time in our voting, and we've been doing the voting for 75 years, for the first time we had two members of Asian publications vote. And they were both very proud to do it. One of them spoke at our World Series meeting about how proud he was that he made the 10 years and he was going to get a ballot, and he was very excited about it. And they won't be the last, because we now number about 65 Asian writers from Japan and Korea and Taiwan. We have many Canadian voters, of course. We've had them over the years, and we have voters from Latin America. So it's growing. It's growing, and the Asian people that cover us are very, very proud of being baseball writers, of having that card, and hopefully someday getting to vote for the Hall of Fame.
Sum up a little bit what it's like to be a BBWA voter, and what goes through your mind when you get that ballot in the mail, and you're starting to fill it out.
Well, for the first timers, I think you're a lot stricter. I noticed that when the people who are voting for the first time, they feel they're like kind of defenders of the realm kind of thing, and they know who's in the Hall of Fame, the special quality to it. But as you do it year after year, once you decide in your own mind that I think this person belongs in the Hall of Fame, like Burt Blyleven, for example, you usually keep voting for that person. So when the ballot comes the next year and somebody you voted for in the past, a Larkin, a Blyleven, you probably start off by saying, well, I've already made a decision on them, so there's my votes for those people. You look at new people on it. Maybe you talk to a writer who says, why don't you vote for Don Mattingly? Go back and look at his record. So now you study somebody. Also, you study somebody who's on for the last time. This year, for example, Dave Parker. It's going to be his last time on this ballot. Let's give him a real, day in court and look at some people. I did this with a few players the last year. I said, all right, I'm gonna give this person a vote. So a lot of different things come into it. You're dealing with, yes, there are probably 10, 12 people you dismiss right out of hand. But I think that's what most people do. It's not just a matter of, dun. You got a whole month to do this. You're talking with other writers. You're talking with friends, baseball fans, people that you know. Maybe I've talked to people who were teammates or managed people who are now on the ballot. Tell me more about this person and so forth. Because character, integrity, that's part of it too. What I try to do is envision a plaque of that person. Can I imagine this person on a plaque in the gallery? And I also encourage writers to come to Cooperstown if they can. And I'm glad to hear that a lot of them, if they get an off day and they're in New York or Boston, that maybe they make a day trip and come here. Because I do think that makes a difference. You walk into that gallery, see what it's about. I think it'll help you when you vote.
When you stand in that gallery, it's a special kind of place. It's almost like, some people compare it to a church. I think you have a different feel for the process, a different feel about how important it is and how big it is if you're standing there in the actual building. That's why I encourage people to come here. I think you come away with that. This is really a very special place and a very different place from most other cities in America. And that sense of this is how you're immortalizing this person. This is where you're putting this person. Please be sure that this person belongs there. I think that's part of the process too. How does a candidate get onto the annual ballot, and what are the criteria for that player to get there?
Well, there's several criteria, but the process begins in April. You know, you get the announcement in January, but it actually goes back to April when it begins. I get a list of the players who fit the first criterion that they played in 10 Major League seasons. Now, that list might have 40, 50, maybe even 60 players on it. A lot of them are, you know, fourth outfielders and fifth infielders and backup catchers. So we have a screening committee of 6 writers from different parts of North America, and they vote. It's a pretty liberal committee. You get 2 votes from the 6, you go on the ballot. So this year's ballot, I think, had 33 names on it. And the committee has about 10 weeks to go over these names, study them, and then vote. And we set up the ballot, and I usually bring the ballot up here on induction weekend, which is in late July. Now that we know who the players are going to be on the ballot, they start putting together biographical sketches on each person on the ballot. Because when that envelope arrives to the writers in December, it isn't just a ballot in there. There's a complete bio sketch of every name that's on that ballot. Also a list of what the voting was the previous year. There's a letter from the president, Jeff Idelson, and there's also the rules of the Hall of Fame voting, and all of that comes in one packet. So by getting that ballot up here in July, they can start working on that.
Standard for election to the Baseball Hall of Fame is incredibly high, 75% of the vote. How is that standard served to establish the Hall of Fame's place in the sports world?
Well, I don't think there's any other election like it. I mean, think of if you needed 75% to become the President of the United States, the White House would be perpetually unoccupied. I mean, it's very, very special. I think the one criticism we get is that the writers don't put in enough people. Well, it's not us keeping it out, it's the 75%. I mean, that's a tremendous if you think about every 4 ballots you get, you got to be on 3 of them. And that's just to be right there at 75%. So, and I remember one election involving Nellie Fox his last year, and he finished 2 votes shy. And he had like 74.6% or something like that. And there was some discussion among the writers, well, maybe that should be rounded off. But the chairman of the Hall at that time, Ed Stack, contacted my predecessor, Jack Lang, and said, no, pure 75%. You've got to get .750. So that's the thing that makes this Hall of Fame, I think, different from all other Hall of Fames. The guys that get in, they're really, really special because 75% makes it so.
When are the ballots distributed to the members, and how long do they have to return their ballots once they receive them?
The ballots go in the mail no later than December 1st. Might be November 29th, might be November 27th, and they have the entire month of December. We count the ballots that I receive with at least with a December 31st or earlier postmark. So they have an entire month.
Once the ballots are returned, how are they counted?
Well, we have a post office box where I live in Queens, and I go about every 3 days and pick up the envelopes. I bring them back. I keep a box in one of the rooms in my apartment. I just put the envelopes in there unopened. We also get some faxes. I keep a separate envelope. When the faxes come in, I put them in that envelope. We don't open the envelopes until the day that we count. We do the counting now in a conference room in the Ernst & Young building, which is on Times Square in New York. And Mike DeLisi, a partner in Ernst & Young, and I do the counting together. So Ernst & Young verifies the vote. We started that in 1997. It was the first year we did that. And I think it's terrific to have. I was somebody who watched the Academy Awards, and I bought that corny thing at the beginning when the Price Waterhouse people came out. And that's what I wanted when I took over this job. I wanted to get a group like that, and ended up with the perfect guy to count with him. So yeah, none of the envelopes are opened until that day.
You have the job of calling the new electees to let them know that they've been elected. It's kind of a 2-part question. What's that like, and can you share some special stories from some of those phone calls?
Well, I'm not going to lie, it's a kick. I mean, it's the reward, I guess, for conducting the election. I recognize it is probably one of the 2 or 3 most special days in that person's life. Certainly his professional life is when he's told he's been elected to the Hall of Fame. I try to keep the call brief for that reason. I mean, I know how special it is. And then hand the phone over to Jane Clark, the board chairman, who makes an official greeting to them. But the initial, hear the voice on the other side of the phone, the reaction, there's a thread in the reaction to each guy. They might howl at the moon, they might cry, but a sense of humility takes over, even the toughest guys. This has really a special day, and I've been elected to the Hall of Fame. Like I said, some of the toughest guys in the world, people like Don Sutton and George Brett, just cried like babies, you know. Brett was interesting because I had told him he was going in with Nolan Ryan and Robin Yount. Robin Yount's his best friend. So he started crying all over again because he was happier for Robin than he was for himself. I think the most poignant one was Eddie Murray. His sister had died, and I actually got him on the phone. He didn't pick up his phone. I called his wife's cell phone. And she didn't make the connection with the baseball writers and the Hall of Fame. And she said, well, he has no comment about anything. I said, he's going to want to take this call. I know the situation you're going through, but I didn't want him to go someplace with a bunch of people and not find out, without hearing from us. And he was very somber. He kind of lost it at the funeral home that morning. And he just gave me a quiet thank you. And we were supposed to have a press conference the next day, and we canceled it because he couldn't come in for another week. So I was really kind of moved by that. And then his wife told me this story, that they go to the funeral, and originally he didn't want people to come back to the house. And then they had so many people that he leaned over at one point and said, I'll tell you what, on the way back, let's stop at a Costco, get some stuff, and we'll bring people back. So they stop in a local Costco. They're on the checkout line. And the fella doing the checkout says, hey, congratulations, Mr. Murray. And his wife turns around and says, what are you congratulating him for? She says, oh, you didn't hear? You got elected to the Hall of Fame today. She said, was that what that phone call was about? So that's maybe my favorite call of all of them. And then there were people like Dave Winfield and Gary Carter and Wade Boggs, people I covered. I knew them a little bit better. So I may have stayed on the phone a little bit longer. But like I say, I try to make the call kind of short and sweet. But and I'm calling for, not just for me, obviously, I'm calling for 581 people.
Mm-hmm.
They're the people, they're the boys and girls that got you in.